Hello and welcome to the MLS UK show. MLS 2024 is almost here and we are back for a brand new season, and this is our season preview. I'm Henry Hewitt and as always I'm joined by...
Elliot Holman. Let's do this. I'm so ready for this.
I know, Elliot, now as we are both fathers, a close season means so much more than just following trades and what you're waiting for the kits to be revealed and all of that stuff. Now you have actually got responsibilities. We've got stuff that takes precedent, but we have still done our research. We've still got our preview sorted, and we're now going to look ahead. And finally, you know what? It's actually quite nice that we have something else to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, what am I, six months in now? It was basically the start of Leagues Cup that my daughter was born, and I feel like, you know, she's finally in some sort of routine. She goes to bed at a reasonable time and sleeps. Thank goodness she actually sleeps. So that opens up a whole world of staying up watching MLS, and I'm absolutely here for it.
The irony of our children having responsible bedtimes, and then we're going to now have not very responsible bedtimes and going to bed at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, pretty much. I make no apology for that. That's been my life since what, 2015, 2016. So yeah, she's gonna have to get on my schedule.
Right, well, we are back for a brand new season of the MLS UK show, and in previous years we've kind of done it on Zoom, and then we've done it in the studio at Elliot's, and the whole episodes have kind of been different. You've had a longer episode at Elliot's where we have all your favourite features, and then we do it on Zoom just while we are now, and it's a bite-sized episode of the MLS UK show. This year, we are going to be doing the same thing every week, and don't let that put you off. What I mean by that is every episode is just branded as the MLS UK show, and for OGs of the MLS UK show, you will know that we start every episode off with the game with the changing name.
The game with the changing name is where I give you the career path of an MLS player who's also played in the UK. Could be past or present. And Henry, I went on a stag do last weekend, and it was for Nathan Green, who is an Orlando City fan, who I met through the Orlando City UK fan club. And now I'm going to be a groomsman at his wedding. Like, I love MLS so much. I love MLS fans so much. And as part of his stag do, we went to watch his local team in the National League South, Chippenham Town. And Chippenham Town versus Braintree threw up an MLS UK player. And I thought, well, what better way to start the season than to give this to you? So it's a toughie. It's a tough one to start.
We've not done it in a while. I mean, you could have gone easy on me, Elliot, but okay, I'm willing to... I need something to get my MLS juices flowing again. It's been close season and we've not done game in the changing name for a while, so go on, hit me.
It's hard for me as well because this player started their career with Ipswich Town. And they made 2 appearances for Ipswich. They went on loan to Bristol Rovers, where they played 7 times. And then they moved to MLS and played for Toronto FC 54 times. After that, Mansfield, Carlisle, Cambridge, Stowmarket, Sudbury, and now Braintree Town.
Wow. What a career.
It's a toughie. So they left Toronto, by the way, in 2013. So it predates the MLS UK show. But, you know, 54 appearances for Toronto is a decent haul. So if you've heard that and you're like, I think I know who that is, then get in touch. It's at MLS UK show.
Yep, on all the socials. If you're watching on YouTube as well, stick it in the comments. It'll leave a timestamp. And don't go to the end of the episode. Find out who it is and then come back, because we know. And it's 2024. We're not putting up with that cheating anymore.
We definitely don't know. But still, I'm very glad it's back. Excuse me and my cough, by the way. I'm very glad it's back. And I'm very glad that we've got a brand new season of MLS to talk about. It's all It's all very surreal, but here we go.
Elliot Holman, Henry Hewitt, MLS UK show.
So now it's time to preview MLS 2024. And before we start looking at the Western Conference, we need to discuss this. This has been the biggest news story of the last few days in MLS. And, well, by the time this episode goes out, it could all be cleared, it could all be fine. However, for now, there seems to be a problem with the referees, that they may be going on strike. There are reportedly about 50 replacement referees set up in case they need to be drafted in for the first round of matches. Elliot, this is
Imagine
probably...
how bad they are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is probably, we're entering this new era of MLS where you've got like one of the best players of all time playing in it, but still, there's still moments that bring you back and go, yeah, that's a very MLS thing to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we got this Apple TV deal. We're in season 2 of 10 of that. And we've got the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Leo Messi. And we've got incredible new stadiums and state-of-the-art this and that. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to come back down to earth with a bump.
Yeah, they are trying to come up with like I suppose a deal to sort all this out. We're speaking on Monday evening here in the UK. First match is on Wednesday evening in the States. So I'm not overly confident that something's going to happen that will, mean, especially because if you think about it, if it gets to Tuesday or Wednesday, these referees, they can't exactly just drop everything and travel. They might have to travel from one area to the country to another. It's going to take time. So, yeah, we'll wait and see on this one. But, hopefully it gets resolved, and hopefully we can start the season with the referees that are actual MLS referees. I'm sure the drafted refs will be good in their own way. But as Elliot, as you pointed out, we're not overly confident with the standard of refereeing anyway in MLS. So we'll wait and see. But that's what's happening. That's the lay of the land at the moment going into the new season. Let's talk about the actual teams then. Let's talk about what is actually going to go on the pitch. And let's start with the Western Conference. And I guess you've got to start with Austin FC. A team that's you've got a soft spot for, considering your nephew's called Austin. However, after that first inaugural season, it's gone a bit downhill for him, hasn't it?
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's not loads of postseason or preseason news that kind of makes you think, yeah, that was a blip. They're gonna turn it around. I love Austin. I love the fans. I love the stadium. I love the fact that they turn the whole place green when they score a goal. It's those little things are kind of what makes MLS. Struggled last year. For me, I just feel like, was Max Arruti the player last year? No. Are they even weaker without him? Yeah. And unfortunately, that seems to be the lie of the land for Austin. I hope they surprise me, but it doesn't look like they're going to.
Yeah, well, with Arruti, they've lost a few other players of MLS experience as well. And I feel for me, I'm just a bit underwhelmed by it all. As you said there, Austin are a very likeable team, especially if you're looking in from abroad like we are. When you're watching the matches, it looks great. Obviously, with the green, they've got McConaughey as well, which is a part of it. So it's all exciting. And this is where the first season of MLS, we loved Austin. We were like, this is great. They're doing so well. Can they, in a similar way to St. Louis last year, can they make it through and get MLS Cup? Obviously they couldn't. And yeah, last year was disappointing. This year, I kind of expect much of the same, unfortunately. You are wondering at the moment, okay, they've still got Driussi, who's a big player for them, but other than that, you're kind of wondering where's the flair going to come from? Where's the excitement going to come from? Who's going to, if they're down 1-0 going into the last 10 minutes, who's going to be that person that's going to drag them over the line? Other than Driussi, I can't really think of many others. So, it could be a long season for Austin fans, couldn't it?
Yeah, and remember as well, we felt like they had a bad season, but it was in a weak Western Conference, and if you'd have placed them in the East, they really, really would have struggled. So I'm hoping the West as a whole is a bit stronger this year, but Austin are probably not the team to look at straight off the bat that are going to make that happen.
Well, a team that we could look at, and a team who has had a much stronger close season and pre-season, especially with the signings that have come in, is Colorado Rapids. Now, I know you're like me, you're very excited to see what this Colorado Rapids will look like. I mean, some of the names that they've signed, obviously, Milojevic has come in. We knew him at Chicago, did very well there. Zach Steffen's come back from England, from Manchester City, so he's going to be strong. He kind of needs to re-energize his career a bit at Colorado. You've got then, who else you've got? I mean, there's been so many names. You've got Sam Vines coming in, of course, US, you know about him coming in from Belgium. And then you've got Omir Fernandez coming in from the Red Bulls at MLS Experience. I think that's the reoccurring thing, is they have brought MLS Experience in to that team, and they needed a shot in the arm, and I think they could well get it.
Yeah, I agree. Jack Price, MLS UK player, has departed. He obviously missed most of last season anyway. Rubio's gone, Yarborough's gone, Danny Wilson, another MLS UK player, has gone. It feels like they've really strengthened. Their coach is Chris Armas, and it's a bit of a joke on the podcast, but I just have a real problem with it. He does not scream success to me. So this is a massive opportunity for him as well. He's always going to get these jobs. You know, he has a reputation within the league, so felt like a bit of a cheap option to me. And there's a few of those when you look around the league that we'll get to. But he has more to prove to me than any of those new signings, including Zach Steffen, who's fallen off massively since we last were acquainted, shall we say, stateside. I really want Zach Steffen to do really well, but he has not had the minutes, so he does not come into this the best keeper in the league like he was when he left. One of. So, Chris Armas, what can you do? Prove me wrong.
Yeah, the funny thing is that in my notes here, I've actually put, I've said Colorado should be looking to get the playoffs. They've got a strong first 11 for me. But the irony is, and we see so many times where it's like, oh, they've got a good head coach, but they've not really got the players on the pitch. It's completely the opposite. They've got a good team, but Chris Armas is a man who left MLS with not a great reputation. He's gone to Europe, he's gone to England, and he's left there with a worse reputation. So he's really got to build his reputation back up. And this, for me, I think is do or die for Chris Armas, because if he doesn't get it right here, I don't see where he's going to go after this. I mean, he must have a great agent. I'll give him that. But, you know, I want it to work for him. I think he's quite a likable character within football. I quite like seeing him in the dugout at Leeds and at Manchester United and whatever. But yeah, it's not worked for him so far. I was surprised he got this job, and there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of eyes on Colorado this year.
Yeah, and I think rightly so. I think a lot of things have fallen into place with that roster. So you kind of, you know, is it the best roster? No, it's certainly not the worst. And so that's where the coach makes a difference. And ultimately, he's being paid to do that. So all eyes are on Chris Armas.
Right, let's move to FC Dallas then. Dallas brought in Petar Musa on a DP. I'm excited to see how he's going to do from Benfica. And I think him coming in, it might allow Jesus Ferreira to just, be that second striker, just kind of takes the pressure off him a little bit. I'm not saying that he doesn't enjoy the pressure, because I think he kind of does. But, Musa coming in, really interesting signing. The most they've ever spent on a player. It's a record signing. And I think with him, if he gets it right, and Ferreira kind of in those front three spaces, we could finally see Dallas get over that line. Because for me, and I think this will be the same this season, they're very comfortable getting into the playoffs. We've seen them. They just seem to be 4th, 5th every season. They just seem to fight for that home game in the first game of the playoffs. You kind of think, well, yeah, they'll be in the playoffs. You need that person just come in and just push them over the line, push them to the latter stage of the playoffs. And if this guy, we've seen many signings from Europe, but if they can get it right with him, with Ferreira as well, we could see a lot more from Dallas.
Yeah, the overriding reaction to this signing from people who know a lot more than I do, and probably hold your hands up as well, Henry, and say you as well. Is that it just means that you get a lot more from Jesus Ferreira, and so I think having him kind of playing where he plays best, right up top, maybe that's as a secondary striker. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with Dallas this year. They always seem like that team to me. There's always excitement. There's always exciting signings, even if they're youth for the future. Dallas have always kind of got something. You feel like they got something to show you, and this year definitely that feels like the case.
Yeah, it does, and I can't wait to see them again. I mean, just for record and for anyone who's watching this wanting to watch Poppy's kit reviews, they will come next week. And I think this jersey is one that she's personally gonna love. And as a husband, I should really know what she likes and dislikes. She has surprised me a lot in recent years with some of her choices. But yeah, I think the Dallas one, definitely looking forward to seeing that in MLS this year, and hopefully them doing well, because again, they're we like Dallas on the MLS UK show. We like what they're about. We like that in Leagues Cup last year, they were the first team to really give Messi a game. So yeah, I am hoping for Dallas. I think they're comfortable in the playoffs, but just to push that little bit on, and we'll see if we can get them to closer to MLS Cup.
I like them more than I like their jersey. Let's just say that.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see who Poppy agrees with next week. Right, let's move on to Dallas's Texas rivals, Houston Dynamo then. Houston had a hell of a season last year that's resulted in a trophy. It resulted in going quite far in the playoffs as well. They became everyone's sort of favourite underdog story last season. This year, however, I'm a bit worried. I don't think they're going to have a horrific season, but I'm not 100% sure whether they can build on what we had last season.
Yeah, I think probably victims of their achievements last year, to be honest. Last year, we really enjoyed it because it's been a long time since we watched, have we ever watched Houston and thought, look at this, they play beautiful football, soccer ball. And I think this year you kind of go, can they do it again? Potentially not. Players they've lost, Corey Baird, Ivan Franco. Baird's a massive loss for me. He's gone to Cincinnati, a team that didn't need strengthening, if I'm honest. So for me, losing Corey Baird is huge. Are they going to be able to sustain the way that they played last year? Potentially not. But you don't have to play beautiful. You just have to find a way to win.
No, exactly. And another thing that they have this season that we haven't had in quite a while is the Champions League. They're in that. They're facing St. Louis City in the first game, which in the first round, which I think will be a hell of a game. But if they go out in the first round if they go out after the second leg of the Champions League, it's not that much of a big deal for them. If they progress and get further on, like they did in the playoffs last year in MLS, that could take a hit on their league form. I know already they've got some of the bigger names that are out injured, so it could really affect the start to the season. For me, that's probably why I think Houston, I think by all means, and with Ben Olsen as manager as well, they can get into the playoffs. I think they should still be looking to push for playoffs. I think they've turned a corner from that Houston we saw years ago where they would just be, another team in MLS. They just didn't really offer much. They would be looking at 10th, 11th, 12th every year, 13th. I think they've passed that now, but whether they can push on from where they finished last year, 4th in the West, I'm not 100% sure. But, just like Dallas, I like Houston, so I hope that they can do it. It's nice to see that they did well this last season.
And wearing purple, things could be different,
Yeah, well, wearing purple won't mean that they'll get to MLS Cup, because that doesn't tend to happen. But hey, it'll mean they'll get in the playoffs. But we'll talk about the East later on. Right, a team that they are the kings of getting to MLS Cup right now is LAFC. Runners up last year, following their win the year before. A lot of changes really at LAFC this year. They've lost some experience in in Chiellini, who is sticking around at the club, but they've lost that experience. They've brought in Hugo Lloris, who will give them that experience. Buanga's still there as well. So there's some pros, probably more pros than cons in the close season. Are you expecting much of the same from LAFC this year?
Yeah, Buang, it's an obvious statement, but let's make it anyway. Buanga staying is huge. The guy is one of those, he's up there with Cucho at Columbus for me, where you want to watch him play soccer. He is really, really positive with the ball, scores incredible goals. Buanga is my massive name on the retained list for LAFC. And then, losing Acosta, like you say, Chiellini. But Atuesta comes back, Campos, Hugo Lloris is massive. He's a World Cup winner, and sure, he's getting on, but there's an MLS UK player, will 100% be on the game with a changing name at some point, I'm sure. But, for me, having Hugo Lloris in goal and Buanga up top, you automatically are talking playoffs if both of those players, are fit and are playing games. And so they have to be in that conversation once again.
Yeah, I wish he was on the game with a changing name this week. It'd be a lot easier for me. Still don't no idea who it is. Hopefully it'll come during the episode. But yeah, you've got a good point there. And I think what is important for LAFC is that they've brought someone with that experience in. Of course, we've mentioned before, Chiellini's gone. Carlos Vella's gone as well. So there's two players with huge amount of experience, not only on the world stage, but then Vella with his MLS experience. So to bring in Lloris, who can just maybe have a talk with some players, when they need it, will be important. But Buanga is the main guy. If he stays the full season, which I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced that he will. I think in the summer, we might get until the summer out of him in MLS. But if he stays the whole season, then LAFC have got to be favourites in the West, because he's someone like Yohani Mukhtar's at Nashville, like Cucho at Columbus, that bit of a spark, that special player that will automatically take you up the league. If they've sorted out the defence, not that they needed sorted out anyway, but if they've got an experienced head at the back in goal as well, it could be a real good season for LAFC. But just to mention as well, we did point out that we did think a few years ago, we said LAFC could build a bit of a dynasty. And at the moment, you're feeling that could be happening.
Everything about the club, from the image to the stadium to the signings, I think they've got so much of it right. And you have to hold your hands up. You have to say fair play. They consistently are a force to be reckoned with, and I can't see that changing this year.
Right, let's move over to LA Galaxy then. I say a dynasty. They had one. They've definitely not got one at the moment. They finished 13th last season, which I know things haven't been great, but for Galaxy's high standards was very poor. Although I like what they've done in the close season. Okay, Chicharito's gone. Douglas Costa's gone. Didn't really do much, did he, Douglas Costa? But, they've lost the likes of Raheem Edwards. Billy Sharp wanted to stay, but hasn't. So, they've had a real refresh, and I quite like what they've done.
Yeah, so just for me to literally read you the business they've done, because this is important, right? LA Galaxy have got it so wrong for so long. So the excitement here is 2 DP wingers. Okay, now we kind of thought Chicharito was going to be huge. We thought Douglas Costa was going to be huge. It just didn't really work out. And if you remember, we were talking about Chicharito going through some kind of dry spell, as almost as bad as Torres at Chelsea at one point. So 2 DP wingers, 9 million fee from Genk for one, and 10 million fee, which is huge, for another. Now, this is if they've got this right, finally, we could be talking about a Galaxy team not only making the playoffs, but actually challenging. But of course, these are not players that have played in Europe. I'm not going to pretend that I know anything about them. I just hope that they've actually done some scouting for a change, because I feel like sometimes it's really easy to sign players on name. Douglas Costa. I really, really hope that these are two DPs that are going to make a difference, because DPs in MLS are becoming more and more important now. You know, Miami have got Lionel Messi. You got to go and use your DP slot to get someone who can be on that level. That's the level now.
Yeah, it is, and this is it. Into Miami and what they've done has really upped the game. But I think also it's for me, it's kind of made teams like LA Galaxy probably go, well, we can't compete with Inter Miami, and they're bringing in let's face it, the type of player that Galaxy have been doing for years. They've been the ones that have been going, we'll get the aging superstar from Europe. Miami have took that on, and Galaxy for me have then gone, right, okay, we're just going to do things our own way. Like you said there, the Pantzl, who I'm not sure about has been confirmed yet, but it's about 99.9% certain, so we're going to take it that it has been. And as well, Gabriel Peck from Vasco da Gama they look good players, and I think it's just something a bit different. And for me, when you look at Galaxy last year, ending the season with a strike force of Chicharito and Billy Sharp, with respect to those players, the fact that now they're coming in with not only Pantzl, but also Peck, and then, of course, Jovicic from easy for me to say. That's a strong front three for me, potentially anyway. And I think that's what could really excite LA Galaxy fans this year, because they need it, don't they? LA Galaxy fans have been suffering for years now. They really need just a bit of freshness and excitement.
Yeah, a bit more from Ricky Puig as well, who's going to be playing in behind as well. And I think they've got a really, really strong front four, maybe. I think Puig is not probably going to be classed as a forward, but there's some real talent there. So this could be the year that things turn around for LA Galaxy, but we've got excited about them before and they've consistently let us down. So let's wait and see, but certainly it's the most promising they've been in a long, long while.
Yeah, and also John McCarthy as well. He's coming from LAFC, goalkeeper, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does on a regular basis. Of course, he was the hero of one of the heroes of the MLS Cup win for LAFC a few years ago. He's not then been given the opportunity since, so he's now gone to LA Galaxy for that. So we'll see how he does across LA.
Okay, how about Minnesota United? Because as a Norwich City fan, I lost Teemu Pukki, and we got half a season from him in MLS last year, and I feel like we're letting the man down. He's not even got a coach at Minnesota, let alone anything else.
I know, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how Pukki does this year. I think he showed signs in last year, but then this year, I think I expect a lot from him. I think he can have a really strong season. However, he does need a head coach, doesn't he? To start the season without one, he's really poor on Minnesota. And it's not like Heath left, weeks before the start of the season. They've had so long to sort this out. Rumours today that Eric Ramsey, who is a coach at Man United, is going to come in. He's 31. He would be the youngest head coach in MLS history, and younger than both me and you, which would be very depressing. But there's, where do Minnesota go from here? No one's expecting much from them this year, but they have got a front line of Reynoso and Pukki, so they have got something in the team.
Yeah, and to be fair, wingers as well, Lod, Bongi, like you feel like there's potential, an interesting jersey which we'll come on to next week. But it's basics, isn't it? Start the season with a coach. I mean, what are you really expecting come October, November, December when you're starting the year without even having a coach? Couple of signings, nothing that's really going to get anybody excited. Reynoso remains every single month. It seems like there's some kind of problem with Reynoso, but he's still there, and that's huge. Other than that, I think you've got to get a coach and you've got to establish some kind of style of play. Pukki can only do so much. He's a fox in the box. He's a poacher. He's a finisher. You need to create 99% of the rest of the move without him. So what does that look like? They don't know because they don't have a coach. It's blown my mind a little bit at this point.
Yeah, it's so disappointing for Minnesota because they have been, as I said, they've been consistent. You know, they had Adrian Heath for so long, and you kind of knew what you got with them. Of course, you know, over here in the UK, we see the crowd singing Wonderwall at the end of the match. It's a likable team, one of the underdogs in MLS that you think, well, one day with a great season, they could perhaps win MLS Cup, but that's quite far away at the moment. I feel they've just took their eye off the ball a bit and it's completely gone, and it's such a shame to see. And I'm sure Adrian Heath is looking on from the UK now and wondering what has happened to what he's built, because, you know, I think they started off poorly in MLS, but that's expected. You know, there was no pressure on them. Then they built something and were getting in the playoffs and were showing stuff. And then the last few seasons, it's just gone kind of back to square one. And now this is square, well, -1. So, yeah, you know, Pukki will be interesting to see this year because, you know, he's a good player and you saw him firsthand at Norwich and he's a goal scorer. But you've got to have the players around him who are not only quality-wise, which no doubt that front four are, but mentality-wise as well. If things aren't going well off the pitch, they're not going to bring it onto the pitch. Pukki's just going to be isolated. Yeah,
I think, you know, Puki's not somebody who's going to come deep and come and get the ball. You know, that's for your 10s and for your wingers to go and work their magic. But yeah, you're right. Minnesota, there's a lot of work to be done. I can't see them making the playoffs at this point. And if they do make the playoffs, I can't see them going deep. Because there's too much work to do and no one's doing it currently.
Exactly. Right, let's move on to Portland Timbers then. Any people from the UK, who are watching this and trying to decide teams to support in MLS might be looking at Portland Timbers with Phil Neville in charge. He's their new head coach. We spoke to Jake Zivin, MLS commentator for Apple TV. He was on the podcast at the end of last season and he was talking about Portland Timbers and Phil Neville. So check that out if you've not heard that. There's a lot of work to do at Portland, and we said that last year. Coming into this season, they've got only one DP in Evander, who, for me, really needs to show his worth. There's a lot of pressure on him this year to be that guy. They've got 2 open DP spots. The signings in close season have been okay. MLS experience, you know, goalkeeper and Kamal Miller coming in from Miami, but I'm still underwhelmed really with Portland. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't hide my confusion on the Phil Neville appointment. So let's start with that. I think Phil Neville, for me, you know, you want to support these British managers going over to MLS. Unfortunately, some of the British managers and coaches that are taking charge of teams this season are extremely poor and have really poor records. Phil Neville, you know, was in charge of a Miami side who were bottom of the league and was fired. And Portland have gone, yeah, do you know what? That works for us. It's confusing, really confusing. Kamal Miller is the bright spot here. Kamal Miller is a fantastic defender. I thought he was exceptional in the World Cup, and I almost thought it was a shame that he was at Miami because I'm a huge fan of his. And he's been on the podcast, and I remember talking to him and thinking, wow, like his attention to detail is incredible. So I'm glad that that's come into fruition in recent years, but he, of course, strengthens them. We're hearing that they've got at least one DP coming. Who is it? Don't know. What positions they play? No idea. Apparently, it's they're filling that spot in the 9. I don't know. Again, it all feels a little bit too little, too late.
Yeah, MLS are not exactly the best at keeping things secret. Even the Messi thing had kind of been not leaked, but talked about for a while going into it. So if it was someone of real quality coming in at number 9, especially someone, say, from England, joining Phil Neville, we'd have probably heard about it by now. So I don't know, they may surprise us, but Portland, you know, I don't know. I think this is the season for me. You normally look at Portland and think, yeah, they'll be fighting for playoffs because it's Portland, and even if they don't get into the playoffs, they're there or thereabouts the last few weeks of the season. This season, I'm not as confident about Portland. The Phil Neville appointment is an interesting one. I don't know whether it'll work. There's a lot of stuff going off the pitch at Portland, and that appointment didn't exactly help the matters. So yeah, I just think it's I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced by Portland, but like you said, they've made one or two good signings, but will that get them over the playoff line? I'm not sure.
RSL then, a team who open up their season first against Miami. Everybody's going to be watching because it's Miami and everyone's talking about them. First of all, are they going to play like Barcelona? I have no idea, but they're certainly going to look like Barcelona.
Yeah, it's a nice trick they've done there, is thinking that Messi might pass them the ball if, he gets some flashbacks to playing for Barcelona. But yeah, RSL did what RSL do last year. They got in the playoffs, got into about 5th place, I think it was in the end. Obviously, they lost to Houston, which were very close matches on a knife edge, really. Could have gone either way. Whereas a couple of seasons ago, that went in their favour. They got to the latter stages of MLS Cup. I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Crooks, of course, a MLS UK player. That'd be interesting. I thought he did quite well for Middlesbrough, so how that'll transcend to RSL will be interesting to see. Obviously, they've lost Krylak, which will be their experience gone. He's gone to he's gone to Vancouver, and he was the RSL guy. Him and Rusnak at one point were the 2 RSL guys. They've now gone, so it's a new start for RSL, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they'll do. Personally, I think if they make playoffs, they'd have had a good season.
Of course, you managed to mention Rusnak. It's been so long since he played for RSL, but still he gets a mention because he shares a birthday with Henry. I think one thing to point out with RSL as well is they come into this season bizarrely in the best form. They are the only MLS team, I don't know if you know this, that have made the playoffs for the last 3 years. And so, maybe they don't spring to mind as the team who are going to make the playoffs, but actually consistency is key and they're always there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Well, you compare them to Portland, you'd always say, Portland, they'll be in the playoffs, so they'll be fighting for playoffs. And actually, the last few seasons, they've underwhelmed, since the MLS Cup defeat. Whereas RSL have been consistent, similar to Dallas. These teams that are, I would like to call the underdog teams, the teams that do well and get in the playoffs, but don't really get shouted at that much. RSL have been like that, but, every team is... we've had some teams make playoffs for 10 years in a row, and that's stopped now. So I don't see RSL getting to 10, but they could do. They could have a half-decent season this year, but I'd like to... I think they're going to be pushing for it. I think they'll be in and around 6th, 7th, 8th place.
I just want to front up and be honest. Like, RSL play in the West, and they play really late a lot of the time, and I just don't get to watch RSL as much as I'd like to. And so... I kind of hope that they do make the playoffs for a 4th year, and I hope that more people start to talk about them. And I think they really do get forgotten, and kind of in that era of maybe Colorado as well. Not a hugely fashionable club, but actually, they're doing bits. And Colorado wish they were half as successful as RSL recently.
Well, let's move on to San Jose Earthquakes then. I think we'll get more of the same from San Jose. I think they'll be in the bottom half of the conference more than the top half this year. Cade Cowell has gone to Mexico. They've also lost the likes of Jonathan Mensah, Monteiro as well. So, Lucho Gonzalez has got a big job there, hasn't he, this year?
Yeah, there's some big losses there. I'm a big fan of Monteiro. Mensah, of course, is huge. Cade Cowell, I love. You know how I feel about us losing these young players. I think we're moving hell on earth to get players like Messi, but actually for the good of the league, we should be, offering up some kind of way in which clubs can try and hold on to the likes of Cade Cowell. I believe it was about $4 million. We've just heard about LA Galaxy, for example, splashing nearly $20 million on 2 wingers. We can't keep Cade Cowell for $4 million. It seems a shame that we're losing out on these talents, especially US homegrown talents. I think it's a tough job to have more success with San Jose than last year. And it's another terrible San Jose kit, by the way.
Yeah. Again, we'll see what Poppy thinks, but it's not one of my favourites either. Yeah, it'll be a long season for San Jose. As just said there, I don't think they'll be pushing playoffs, but they have got Ibobasi up front, and if he's on form, then he'll provide goals that could get them in there. So I think a lot of pressure's on Ibobasi this year. Right, Seattle Sounders. Now we're going to be very optimistic about Seattle Sounders, I'm sure. A lot more optimistic than San Jose. You look at some of the players they've brought in and kept. They've obviously got De La Vega is, the largest transfer fee in their history. They've lost Ladero to Orlando, which I think is a good signing for Orlando. But I don't think I don't worry about Seattle. I think after a few years, I know they won Champions League, but a few years kind of. Well, it was 1 year in the end, wasn't it? Struggling in MLS, and then they came back last year and got in playoffs. I think they're going to add to that this year. And for me, if LAFC are looking for a team that's going to compete at the very top of the conference, then they've got to look at Seattle.
Yeah, for me, Seattle's biggest issue was scoring goals. I really thought that by signing Heber last season that they were kind of going to set the world. Whoa. What are you wearing?
Me? It's a Messi t-shirt. I managed to find in Manchester. So it's repping Messi today. But we'll talk about that in the Eastern Conference.
I saw a flash of that and I didn't like it.
I'm an MLS guy. Not a Miami
anyway.
guy, I'm an MLS guy.
Anyway, I liked the signing of Heber, and it just didn't. I don't know why that just didn't happen. They didn't score goals. I think he scored twice or something ridiculous. Ladero, as you mentioned, going to Orlando, which we'll come to, but they just could not score goals. And the amount of games where I saw them, dominate but not score, including against LAFC, of course. I think that's a massive. It's quite a simple thing, but it's one of the hardest things to put right. So how they go about that is going to be crucial going forward.
It is, yeah. But I think if you look at the team they've got, you look even from the top, you got Jordan Morris up front, who is a top striker in MLS. Rodan, Rusnak, as we've mentioned, João Paulo. Then you look at the back, you've got Nuhu, Fry in goal, Roldan at the back. You've got these players that have got loads of MLS experience, and you know what you're getting with them. And I think that is a very dangerous team. It's a very dangerous squad. And it's no surprise for me. Obviously, Ladero's gone, but it's no surprise really that they've not brought in many players, and I don't think they've necessarily needed to. I think it's just been in similar ways to you look at Columbus or Cincinnati. It's just about fine tuning, which I think they've done very well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think certainly on paper, a really, really strong 11. Got to make it work though. Got to be a bit more fluid. Certainly got to finish their chances a lot better, but Seattle, for me, there's no way they have one of those seasons where they dip down. No way.
Yeah, and of course, I didn't even mention Rui Diaz there, so another player that adds to Seattle's quality. Right, Sporting KC then. What Sporting KC are we going to get? Are we going to get the spring-summer Sporting KC or the summer-autumn Sporting KC from last year?
Lost Espinoza, lost Kinder, lost Susie. It's probably the toughest to predict, I reckon. I think, Shallowy, Pulido, Johnny Russell as well, MLS UK player. That's a front three that can cause damage in MLS. But can they do it consistently? Can they do it week in, week out? It's been a long time since we've seen Shallowy, Pulido, and Johnny Russell really devastate teams all together as a trio, all really having a fantastic season all at once. Pulido's very up and down. We know how lethal he can be, but they have to get him firing. Melia in goal, of course, is really, really strong. I think they make the playoffs. If that starting 11 stays fit, I think they make the playoffs, and I think that's actually quite a big statement considering what's kind of gone on with them recently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it all depends on what side you're going to get. Peter Vermees, at one point last year, we were saying they need to just get rid. His time has come, and then he saved it, and he did quite well they got to the conference semis last year, so the season ended positively. But yeah, one thing I'll say about Sporting KC though, and I think when you see the likes of Zusi and Espinoza go, it kind of reflects on where we are with the podcast, because those were the guys when we were starting the podcast that were Sporting KC's, two of their big names, two of their best players, and back when Sporting KC were consistently in the playoffs I say consistently in the playoffs, there was a time where they would get to the very top of the conference and then the next season finish at the bottom and kind of do that. So I hope for their sake that they'll be able to push on now and finish towards the top. But, when you look at last season finishing 8th, I can see a similar season. I think they'd probably do better, maybe get 6th or 5th, maybe push for that home tie or 2 home ties in the playoffs. But, overall, I think there's nothing there to tell me that Sporting KC are going to get to the top of the conference. So, yeah, it's maybe going off experience of the head coach, they might get into the middle part of the playoffs. I think they'll be okay though.
I think with Shallowy, Pulido, and Russell fit and firing, I think they easily make the playoffs, and I think that they'll be up there in the West.
We'll see. St. Louis City, next team we're going to talk about, and it's a very interesting season for them because they are coming off the back of a hell of an inaugural season where they won the Western Conference. Obviously, in the playoffs, didn't quite work out for them, but they've got a tough year this year because there's a lot of expectation there now. They've not really lost many of the big names, so I think the consistency will be there. But as we saw with Austin, it's very difficult to have the first 2 seasons go so well.
Yeah, do you remember in the early weeks, we couldn't believe the goals that teams were giving St. Louis. And that kind of continued. They obviously were good, but I feel like they maybe overachieved a little. I think they'd be the first to admit, just because of how teams kind of seem to just forget how to play football around them. And I think there's a lot of pressure on them now to come with a bit more of a game plan and rely less on nicking points from teams and actually establishing themselves in games, dictating games, making sure that they're on the front foot in games. And it's going to be tough. We talked a lot about their roster this time last year, and we got our fingers burnt. We said, well, there's no one there that really gets me excited. And then they won game after game after game. I do think they struggle more this year.
Right, let's close off the West End with Vancouver Whitecaps. It's going to be I think it's a difficult season to really predict for Vancouver, which will probably mean that they'll finish about mid-table like they normally do. They got 6th last year and then got beat by LAFC. But if you look at some of the signings they've made, Krylat's come in from RSL, Fafa Picot's come in. These are good players, and I think they can add to, when you look at, they've got Ryan Gold up front and Brian White and 1 or 2 other players dotted about. They've got an okay team. I don't think they're going to push for MLS Cup, but I would not be surprised if Vancouver are quite comfortable in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Brian White, Ryan Gold, really, really exciting pairing, to be honest. And one that I really hope, continues in great form, because Vancouver's season is going to heavily rely on them. It's okay to heavily rely on certain players. Toronto will come on to. They're going to continue to try and rely on two Italians that let them down massively last year. They're just going to go again. Whereas Brian White and Ryan Gold, that was a partnership that worked. It's relying on them to do that again is absolutely fine. I think Vancouver have got a fantastic chance this year.
Well, there we go. There's our preview to the Western Conference. Have we mentioned your team? Well, if you support a team in the West, we have. Do you agree with what we're saying? Do you disagree? Get in touch at MLS UK Show on X, in brackets Twitter, Instagram, TikTok as well. You can email us hello@mls.show, or if you're watching on YouTube, comment below on the video and let us know what you think. Right. Now it's time to look at the East, where, of course, the teams that me and Elliot support, if you're new to MLS UK Show, Elliot's an Orlando fan, I'm an Atlanta fan. We're going to have to talk about them. That's coming up next.
The MLS UK Show.
Welcome back to the MLS UK Show. Now it's time to preview the Eastern Conference for MLS 2024, and that starts off with A, which is Atlanta United, which is my team. And if you have been with the podcast since the very start, you'd know that the first 3 or 4 years of this podcast was great for me. It was brilliant. Orlando didn't even beat Atlanta for most of that. And for since then, it's been not horrendous, but average, let's say. So, Atlanta United this year, Elliot, I'll let you kick off. Do you expect another average season, or do you think Atlanta could perhaps show a bit more and push the top of the conference?
I think they should have arguably done a bit better last year. So hanging on to Almada, massive. I think Miles Robinson leaving is really disappointing. By all accounts, just drove himself to Cincinnati and signed the next day at the end of the season. So that is for a US men's national team starter. It's disappointing to lose him for Atlanta, I'm sure. But I think Atlanta have to make them playoffs, minimum expectation. Big team, big stadium, big support, and pressure's always on. Pressure's always on Atlanta.
It is. I think the squad's a lot fresher this year. I'm actually really intrigued to see how they do because, you mentioned there Robinson's left, but also Barco's left, Miguel Berry and Ibarra and Sosa have left as well. So, it's kind of a refresh. It's kind of Atlanta. We've had Atlanta 1.0. We've had 2.0. This is kind of 3.0. But, they've brought in Josh Cohen, who's a goalkeeper I can see taking over from Brad Guzan. So there's finally that sort of succession process there that is in place. Zane Silva did okay when he was at the club last year, 7 goal contributions in 13 games, so it's good to see that he's joined on. As you mentioned, Almada's still there, Giakoumakis is still there, so there's still elements for me of a good team. When I look at the likes of LAFC or Cincinnati or Columbus, do I put Atlanta with them? No, I don't, but there's no reason for me with a good season that they can't make it into the, especially get a home game in the playoffs. They get 2 home games in the playoffs come the end of the season. So I think Atlanta will make playoffs, but I'm with you. I think last year they should have maybe done better than 6th, and I think they will do this year.
Yeah, I think just drew too many games last season. So anything that's gonna tip the balance, just that one extra goal in games is gonna make a huge difference. So remains to be seen, but I'm amazed, and I know everybody else is going to be amazed that Almada is still there.
Yeah, and long may it continue. I don't think it will, but I think we're in the same camp as the Buanga. I'd be surprised to see him after the summer, but he's still here for now. Right, Charlotte FC. They had some big departures. Swiderski left, didn't he? And they've now got 2 DP spots available. Dean Smith has come in. If you are new to MLS and you're from the UK, you'll know Dean Smith, manager at Leicester, Villa, Norwich, Brentford as well. So there's some interest for you. There's some MLS UK players. Nathan Byrne, Scott Arfield played for Rangers, didn't he? He played in Scotland and England. Kieran Westwood, who played at Burnley. So there's a lot of interest from a UK side. However, if you're going to choose Charlotte FC as your team this year, I'd probably think again. I don't think it's going to be a good season for them.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm going to try and look past the Dean Smith thing. because I really struggled with him as a manager at Norwich. I think to be managing in the Premier League with Villa, managing in the Premier League with Leicester and Norwich, and then to suddenly be managing a team in MLS with respect to Charlotte, I think it kind of shows how far he's fallen a little bit. And I haven't seen huge amounts to suggest that the roster is good enough for Charlotte to do much this season, unfortunately.
No, well, they got those 2 DP spots open like Portland have. So you'd like to think that they'd do something there and just get a bit of energy into the team. Because, yeah, at the moment, I just don't... I don't see it with Charlotte, which is a shame because, you know, the first season they did well. Obviously, last year was, you know, stabilised it a bit. Yeah, this season, I'm not hopeful. I mean, they've got... Kerpetti's still there, so, you know, that could be something. He could, you know, he could be that guy. But, yeah, other than that, I don't see much at the moment. They're another team like Minnesota. I just don't think they're ready for the start of the season.
Yeah, I have to agree. But they do have a coach, so they're miles ahead of Minnesota.
That's true. Right, Chicago Fire. I think they're ready for the start of the season. They've had an interesting close season. Of course, Hugo Kuipers has come in, a DP. He'll join Shaqiri on their DP list, and then you've got Kelvin Acosta. You know, with MLS pedigree, Andrew Gutman's come in, friend of the show Tom Barlow as well. So they've brought in MLS experience. I think they're going to finish higher than 13th. I'd be very surprised if they spent the season as low as they have done last year.
I agree. And it's good to see that they have made moves. But are they the right moves? Are these players good enough to get them a guaranteed top 6? I don't know. I at this point I really hope so. Because it's hard suffering with Chicago year in, year out. But also, I feel a bit down on them, and I don't really know why. And then I looked at the predictions from all of the Apple TV analysts, and very, very few of them have got them above 10th in the Eastern Conference. And I kind of just get it, and I don't know. Maybe it's just too much of the past playing on my mind a little bit, but I'm just feel a little bit skeptical about it all still.
Yeah, I'd love Chicago to have a good season. I think that sort of area, that fan base just needs that bit of energy because they're a legacy team. You know, they play at Soldier Field. It's great out on paper. It's brilliant. It's Chicago is a great city, but I don't know. It just they have underwhelmed quite a lot. Shaqiri coming in, we expected a lot. Hasn't really happened for me, not to a standard of what you'd expect. So yeah, we'll have to see what these do. I think they will finish above 13th. I think they've got a chance of making playoffs. But like you said, you've got to build a team. It's all right bringing players in, but you have got to build the team. So. I guess that's down to the head coach, and we'll see if they can make it. And who knows, they could shock us all, you know, with Frank Klopas in charge. But well, let's move on to a team that, well, they didn't shock us because we expected a lot from Cincinnati last year. But I guess if you look back at Cincinnati from a few years ago, they have definitely shocked us because no one expected them to be Supporters' Shield winners a few years ago. They, as we said, are just fine-tuning. Of course, they've lost Brandon Vasquez, which is disappointing for them. Junior Moreno, Mosquera's gone back to Europe. But I still think they've got Acosta still for a start. They've still got a very good team, haven't they?
Yeah, well, they've come up a couple of times when we talked about Houston because of Corey Baird and Atlanta because of Miles Robinson. The reason they've come up already is because that's 2 fantastic additions. Corey Baird was a starter in a really good Houston side last year. And Miles Robinson, we know what he can do. He's a fantastic defender. So they're a stronger side. And of course, you know, when you start looking at the fact they've got their MVP, the league's MVP, Luciano Acosta still, you know, fit and ready to fire. I think fine tuning is exactly what they've done. And I think they've done it really well.
Yes, they have, of course. They've got Champions League to deal with this year, which will be tough. And you'd expect actually Cincinnati to be one of the teams that does quite well in the Champions League. But I think for me, will they get Supporters' Shield again? Possibly not. I think with all the extra distractions, but there's no reason I see them finishing outside the top four, the top 3 or 4 in the East. I think they're still very strong. That moves us on then to Columbus Crew, who are looking to be the first team in years, since 2011, to win back-to-back MLS Cups. Their end to the season was a lot stronger than the start of the season for me. So I think they've got a very good chance of doing that.
You know how much I loved watching Columbus this year. I'm just looking, obviously, Gressel going, Molino. Other than that, they're bringing back so many players that were instrumental in the way that they play, the way they set up, the way that they approach play, the depth they've got and players that can come off the bench and still play the way that Nancy wants to play. I think they really are contenders again for me this year. I can't wait to watch Cucho again. It's like a sickness. I don't know what's wrong with me. I love it. I love the guy. Really such an entertaining team to watch. And, if you are stuck, it's Columbus, Atlanta, early doors, which is goals, by the way. If you go on last year, watch that game. Watch the game because Columbus are fantastic. It's a little replay of the MLS playoffs that we got in October, November time. And if you're just coming into MLS and you wanna, who do I watch? Columbus Crew.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing for them that could disrupt things is the fact that I guess teams will know more how they play this year and how to combat that, and they are there to be shot at. They came from, I don't want to say they came from nowhere, but they came from sort of, all eyes were on, say, Cincinnati, for example, last year, and they kind of came under the radar a tiny bit, but people did start noticing them quite early on. It wasn't like they got to MLS Cup and suddenly it was like, oh, Columbus are here. How have they done that? But I think if Cucho has the season, a full season of what he had half season last year, I think he's nailed on MVP, even if Buanga stays for the full season, because I think he did that well last year. And if he, of course, is MVP, you would then expect Columbus to be there or thereabouts to win MLS Cup again. Okay.
How about DC?
Well, they're not going to win MLS Cup. Let's be truthful. As it's a shame, but no, they're nowhere near it. It's been a bit of a weird one, DC, because you look at some of the players they've lost. Of course, Donovan Pines has gone to Barnsley. He's over in the UK now. The players they've brought in, Jared Stroud from St. Louis. Okay, he did okay last year. They've brought in a new DP as well, Matti Peltola, but coming in as a free agent from Helsinki, he's not exactly, for me, gonna put bums on seats. It's not exactly gonna ignite the crowd. So I don't see it being a good year for DC. I've got to be honest.
No, I agree. Obviously, Benteke is hugely talented and has very natural ability. He has to stay fit. He has to play all of the games. Even just seeing like Birnbaum and Alex Bono, names that were, synonymous with MLS 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's tough to stick your neck out and say DC make the playoffs when you look at what they've got going on.
And I'm sure DC fans, get in touch. You may be a lot more positive than what we are, but I presume that most of you aren't. A fan base that are very positive right now and can't wait for the new season is definitely Inter Miami. I want to say I didn't really stick my neck on the line to say that Chicago will finish higher than 13th. I'm very confident that Inter Miami will finish higher than 14th this year. And they kicked the season off against RSL. It's the first match on MLS Season Pass. Of course, you've got Messi, you've got Busquets, you've got Alba, you've got Luis Suarez. There's so much to say about Inter Miami. we have got other teams to talk about after this as well. But just on into Miami, I guess the big question is, can they do it? Can they go and win MLS Cup?
I think they put huge pressure on themselves, but that's what happens when you go out and get the best. So fair play, they made it happen. We're presuming, of course, that they're roster compliant. I don't want to keep banging that drum, but it's important at the end of the day. The way that MLS is set up is so that there's some kind of fairness for everybody. So let's hope that they can be roster compliant, because they've had issues with that before. And ultimately, for me, I really hope that going out and getting these players and putting it all on these players doesn't leave them too exposed without them. If Messi doesn't play because it's a plastic pitch, or Suarez is injured because his knees are not his anymore, have they got enough about them without those players? I think that's the doubt. I think it's a fair doubt, and I also think it's very fair for you to not have huge amount of options. If you've gone out and got those players, it's cost you money, it's cost you budget, and it's fair that you wouldn't have extremely good backups. So these are the questions. You play a lot of games in MLS, you play a lot of cup games. Messi only got, was it one MLS goal last season, remember, because of injury. We all love Messi, but how many games is he going to play? I think it's going to be really interesting. I think Miami, everyone's going to be watching them for one reason or another. For me, I'm going to be watching because I love Messi, and I'm going to be watching because I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. This could go horribly wrong, and I don't think anybody wants it to, because of a love for Messi, and this is big for the league. But this could go horribly wrong.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, actually. I don't think they'll win MLS Cup, personally. I think it's a lot harder than what people think, especially those people coming in from the outside. If you're watching from the outside, you're looking and going, yeah, Inter Miami will win MLS Cup. I'm sure if we look at the bookies odds, Inter Miami will probably be favourites because of Messi. But then when you look at it, when you look at the logistics of the league, and then you look at the likes of, like you said, Suarez. I've not mentioned at all any of the scrimmages, any of the pre-season friendlies, because I don't really like looking at that and judging that based on a league season, because it's very different, it's more competitive. But if you look at the Miami tour, which, to be honest, from the outside looked a bit of a mess, by the end of it, Messi wasn't playing. Suarez, it was made clear that he can't play more than one game every 3 or 4 days, or he can't train for a few days after playing. To me, I think you're looking at Busquets and Alba. If they can stay fit, then they've got a good chance. But other than that, Messi will probably play every home game, and he'll come in and play quite a lot of games, but a few away games they'll be missing. I still think Messi playing all of them games will get them into the playoffs and comfortable. But when you get to the end of the season and the temperature goes down a bit, and then you've got the playoffs and you've got that pressure as well, like winning the Leagues Cup in the summer was great. That was prime Messi. It was brilliant. It was a great summer. Can you then go in November when you are going to a Portland, for example, or a Seattle where it's colder, or a Vancouver, and do that? I'm not 100%. Well, obviously they won't play those teams. They'd have to play like New York and Toronto and Montreal. But still, the points there, like, I'm not sure over the season whether they can do it. So maybe for Miami, it's get as far ahead as quick as possible, see it out in the summer, and then work it out from there. I don't know. It's fascinating.
I think it's a really good point. I think get points on the board while you can and see what happens.
Right, let's move on to Montreal then. And that's where half of our listeners and viewers now turn off, because we've talked about Miami. But Montreal have brought in Joseph Martinez, which was a bit of a surprise, considering he spent his career in warmer climates, let's say, to come to Montreal. And they don't see sun till June, do they, in Montreal?
They don't play a home game till June. I can't believe that Joseph Martinez and Juan are teammates. I can't live in a world where that's happened. Two arch rivals, Nemesi. Look, he's a fantastic addition to any team if he is playing ball. And we know sometimes at Atlanta he threw his weight around a little bit. There's not much of him, but he threw his weight around a little, and I think any team would be really, really grateful to have him. I think Huan, by the way, is a fantastic winger, and I love him. Well, wing back. And they've also got Raheem Edwards, who it's a really nice trade with Galaxy. So I feel quite up on Montreal.
Yeah, I don't expect much from him this year. I think they've obviously got Wanyama as well, who's aging, who's a good player but still aging. Martinez, we haven't seen the best of him for the last few years. Ruan he'll get assists and he'll provide balls into the box for Martinez and the other strikers. But, and Raheem Edwards, I guess, will do that as well. But for me, I can see it being Montreal, another season of I think they did so well under Wilfred Nancy. And I don't want to be that guy that keeps on bringing up Wilfred Nancy with Montreal, but we did so well. And then last year was 10th. I can see it being another season of 10th, 11th, even lower. The signings they've made, they don't jump out on me, put it that way.
Okay, how about Nashville?
Well, Nashville, as long as they've got Hani Mukhtar, then they've got goals in the team. They've also signed Drew Yearwood, who's a friend of the show. He's been on the podcast, Mackenzie Gaines, Tyler Boyd. So they've got some MLS experience in. To add to like Zimmerman. I think it's an important year for Sam Surridge. He's someone who we have an eye on here in the UK. He's a DP, so there's a lot of pressure on him, and he was a player that was in the sort of championship level in the UK, was doing very well. He didn't quite work out for him for Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, but he's still a youngish guy. He's not you sometimes look at older players coming from the UK over to the States. He's not young. He could have a really big season if he gets going alongside Mukhtar. There could be a lot of goals in this team, but I don't know. I can see Nashville, who have had a very good first few years in MLS. They finished 7th last year. I don't know. I'm probably looking at about the same sort of area for Nashville this year.
They've lost a little bit of experience. Dax McCarty is gone to Atlanta, and Fafa Pico as well. That's two players that I've never seen not play in MLS, two ever presents. And when you lose a little bit of experience like that, I think it always hurts you a little bit. They've gained Tyler Boyd, Drew Yearwood, as you mentioned. For me, I think I just expect much the same from Nashville.
Yeah, I didn't mention Dax McCarthy actually signing for Atlanta. That was a good bit of experience for them. But of course, that means that Nashville has lost that experience. So I think it's another year of him relying on Mukhtar. And I don't know how many more years he can do that, because I think if he doesn't go well from this year, maybe Mukhtar will go, right, I've had my time and leave. So I think Surridge, it's a big year for him, because if he can score goals and take that pressure off, then, it's just a different outcome, isn't it? It's a different mentality. Right, New England Revolution. They've got Caleb Porter in, who there was a lot of praise for that appointment. Caleb Porter has been there and done it in MLS. How do you think this team will do, though? Because they've lost the likes of Gustavo Bo. They've kept Carlos Heel, though. So I don't know. For me, it's. I think they'll make playoffs, but I think they'll be away. They'll have 2 away games in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, Porter's done it in his first year before. He's also done it in his second year as well. So there's every chance. I think losing Boo is big. For me, keeping Carlos Heel is just massive. You just always have a chance. I feel like we get a New England Revolution that can easily make the playoffs. Matt Polster still there, Romney, Farrell, Heel. I think there's a chance. We just need to see what this front three now looks like because it's okay saying, okay, well, Carlos Gil is incredible. What does that front three look like? How is it going to work out? And how strong is it going to be? That's going to be the difference between getting that home game in the playoffs and an away game.
So let's move on to New York Red Bulls then. For me, this is going to be about Emil Forsberg. It's an interesting signing from Leipzig. They've used the Red Bull contacts there. I don't really know much about him, to be honest, but of what I've seen, the clips I've seen, he can be potentially exciting and a bit of a, I don't know, so someone to really, I mean, I've been using the kind of the phrases around igniting fan bases recently on the podcast, and I think for Red Bulls, they need someone, they need like a cult hero, they need someone who's going to come in and who could be that guy, and I think he could be it.
Yeah, and even the teams that finish near the bottom need that. Somebody has to score some goals at some point. And I think that's the thing when we've talked about Pookie at Minnesota. They're not going to be great, but he's going to score goals. Forsberg is being talked about as the biggest thing at Red Bull since Thierry Henry. That's actually just because they haven't done big business for so long. He's come from within the Red Bull family, of course, and it's an incredible signing. I don't know if there's enough about the rest of the roster. I could be wrong, but for them to be a real, challenger. I remember the days of, 2016, 17, 18, when it was Red Bulls and Atlanta going at it. I think there's a long way to go until that, but Forsberg is definitely Red Bulls heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And you can't talk about Red Bulls without talking about NYCFC. I suppose they've still got Magno, who's who's a strong player for them. I don't know. It's another. It's such a shame to see NYCFC for me, but where they are, because they started their time in MLS quite strongly. They were, they had a few, obviously big players. They had a few good seasons. Never really challenged MLS Cup, but they still was exciting, and I enjoyed watching them. And now for me, they've just kind of morphed, blended into everything else in MLS. They're just an MLS team who I don't think are going to make playoffs. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near playoffs personally. It's quite sad to see, actually.
Yeah, I kind of agree, actually. It's a strange one. I think Orlando came into the league at the same time as them, and it always felt like it was all about NYCFC, and maybe, things have flipped a little bit. Speaking of the Orlando NYCFC rivalry, Andreas Pereira even makes his move from Philadelphia permanent. I've thought a lot of him when he was at Orlando. I was really disappointed when he left. And I thought he was really good for NYCFC in the second half of that season last year. So I think that's a really good signing.
Well, go on then. Let's talk about Orlando. Second last year, but you lost to Columbus in the playoffs. Obviously, eventual winners. Can Orlando go one step better this year and get to MLS Cup?
It feels sad that Antonio Carlos has gone from the back line. He was missing for so much of last year anyway with an injury, so maybe time to cash in on him. Okay, makes sense. They have replaced him with Bracalo, who's going to play alongside Robin Janssen. So we'll have two Vikings at the back, which is exciting. We've talked about Ladero leaving Seattle. All the talk is about Luis Muriel, who is a DP striker, Colombian, comes in from Atalanta in Serie A, where he's scored goals. This is someone who's arriving not with a small pedigree. So I'm really, really excited by this. And you feel like with Carlos out, decent replacement in, extra DP striker. This feels like Orlando haven't got any weaker. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think this Uriel, he looks the part. You're looking at. I mean, when they sign players and they're showing the goals, they're not going to show misses, are they? So even me and you playing 7-a-side football would look good in a goals compilation. But I agree with you. I think they've actually built quite strongly. Ladero coming in. he's a strong player, and it's gonna be interesting to see how he does it somewhere other than Seattle. So yeah, I think Orlando should be looking at, I mean, the East is so strong this year. You've got your likes of Columbus and Cincinnati and Orlando, and then you've got Miami and whatever they're going to do. But I'd definitely put Orlando in the top four. So yeah, I think it's an exciting season for Orlando. You've got lots to look forward to. Lots of other competitions as well that you're involved in. So yeah, it could be a chance to build on that first piece of silverware from a few years ago or last year, whenever it was. I've erased it from my memory. But I'm sure as an Orlando fan, this is the closest you've been realistically to MLS Cup, which must be nice to see.
Yeah. Would I have liked to have maybe combined this roster with last year's and created a super roster? Yes, but there's a reason why you can't do that. There's probably a reason why we didn't have some of these players last year. There is a cap in place, so they've not got weaker. So let's just start the season better. Orlando had a terrible start to the season last year and probably would have won certainly the Supporters' Shield if they'd have got it together a little bit sooner. So we shall see. Meanwhile, in Philly.
Yeah, Philly. They are the Mr. Consistency, aren't they? In MLS, they've Jim Curtin's still there. You know what you're going to get with them. Philly, there's no ever danger that they're going to finish outside the playoffs. This year, they've brought in Bedoya and Wagner, who are again two good MLS players. So you'd expect that, if not finish fourth like we did last year, build on it. But again, I think Philly's problem is if they were in the West, you'd look at Philly and go, well, it's between them, Seattle and LAFC. The problem they've got is the teams around them within the East is so difficult. But again, you know what you're getting with them. They've still got the likes of Gazdag as well and Carranza, and they've got strong DPs for MLS. So I'm looking forward to seeing them this year. And I think last year, for their high standards, to go out in the conference semi to capitulate against Inter Miami was actually quite poor from them. So they're on their own sort of revenge mission this year, even though they actually achieved what a lot of clubs in MLS would love to have achieved last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the positive for Philly is that they have brought back the same team. And the negative for Philly is they've brought back the same team. It's a really strong roster, but it's not absolutely unbelievable, like gonna get them across the line against absolutely anyone. So then it comes down to the fine margins. Jim Curtin, of course, is a fantastic coach, and you can put it down to fine margins roster-wise if you've got somebody like Jim Curtin in charge.
Yes, you can. Right, now let's move on to the final team that we're going to preview in this a special MLS UK show bumper preview episode, and that is Toronto FC. Now, Toronto, for me, are a squad where you've got two very good players. You've then got two or three, good MLS players, and then you've got bang average everywhere else, which, as we know within MLS, doesn't get you towards the playoffs and it doesn't win you MLS Cup. Am I being harsh there, or would you agree?
No, I don't think you can be harsh enough on this side. I mean, Insigne, Bernadeschi, not good enough last year, and unfortunately, somehow still the best players on the team. I've just seen the starting 11 and seen O'Neill at centre back, and that's all I need to. This is not a good side. This is not a team that were good last year, and it's not a team that have been improved in the off season. So I really, really feel fear for Toronto, and I fear for the fans as well. Like, they deserve a lot better. They've been used to a lot better. This is a poor side, a really poor side.
And I think that is a great way to end this episode. I don't think I can add anything to that. John Herdman is in charge. It'd be interesting to see how he does in MLS. Of course, did such a great job for the Canadian men's national team. However, with Bernardeschi and Insigne, you're kind of dealing with different personalities than what he would have had with Canada. So, I'm not expecting much from Toronto.
Yeah, it's a toughie. But that is the Eastern Conference previewed. Both conferences previewed.
Yes, get in touch. Tell us your opinions of what we've just said at MLS UK Show on Twitter /X, Instagram, TikTok. Comment below on the video. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? Let us know. Right, before we go then, Elliot, it's time to reveal the answer to the game with a changing name. And I'll be honest with you, I've been racking my brains over the last hour and a half, and I don't know who it is.
No, I wouldn't have got it either. But as I told you, I went to this National League South game the other week, and this player was on the pitch, and I thought, wow, okay. So they started their career at Ipswich Town, played for Toronto FC 54 times, and have also played for Mansfield, Carlisle, Cambridge, Stowmarket, Sudbury, and Braintree. And their name is Reggie Lamb.
No. Sorry, Toronto fans. Sorry. It's pre-MLS UK show. We know a lot from that period, but I don't know about him. So, well done if you got it right. Congratulations. You are 1-0 up in the MLS UK show. Game of the Change Your Name series. We'll be back next week with another Game of the Change Your Name player. Hopefully, it can be one that I have actually heard of.
No promises. I like to make them tough sometimes.
If you're listening on your podcast provider, please leave us a rating. And Elliot, there's one rule and one rule only, and this rule isn't going to change because I don't think LA Galaxy are going to win MLS Cup.
No, it's LA Galaxy style, 5 stars only. Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, thanks very much. Don't forget to click the notification bell, subscribe, and like the video. It really does help. We're approaching 1,500 subscribers now, which is great for us. So thank you to everyone who subscribes. Right, next week, she is back. Poppy is back with her kit reviews. My wife reviews the kits every single season, and she has said some very interesting things along the years. Go back and listen back to them for a preview of what to expect. But we've got so much coming up this year on the MLS UK show. We've got some guests lined up as well. So very exciting times, Elliot.
Yeah, really excited. MLS is back. Early hours of Thursday. Join us, let's all just talk about the best league in the world returning and keep that momentum going into the weekend and then into Poppy's kit reviews, because that's all anyone cares about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we have discovered there is a theme to this podcast and that people just want to listen to hear what she thinks of the kits. That's next week, but for now, I've been Henry Hewitt.
And I've been Elliot Holman.
See ya.